Hello and welcome to Different Perspectives. I'm Paul Ndiho in Washington. Kenya mourns the passing of former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, whose body has returned to his political heartland in Western Kenya. Thousands are gathered in Kisumu and Bondo to pay their respects to a man whose influence shaped up Kenya's political landscape for over 4 decades. The memorial service in Kisumu turned emotional as crowds swelled, resulting in several injuries, with many fainting from the heat and emotion. Odinga's body lay in state at Parliament before being moved to Kisumu for public viewing. President William Ruto honored him as a patriot who helped Kenya during the turbulent times. To reflect on Raila Odinga's legacy and his impact on Kenya's democracy, I'm joined by a legendary professor in Nairobi, Professor Macharia Munene, a respected historian at the United States International University, Africa. Hello, Professor. Welcome to Different Perspectives.
Hello, glad to be here. Thank you very much.
So, set the stage for us. Baba, or as other people call him, the people's president, is no longer here. He's being buried today in his ancestral home. Set the stage for us, Professor.
Well, Raila Odinga has been a unique person as a politician and as a man. He has dominated the Kenyan political scene from 1995 properly. When his father died, that's when he took over. Because the period before that, his father was a dominant figure in politics. And Raila tended to be under his shadow. So what happened after his father died, he came out of the shadow of the father, and he worked very hard to create a political personality of his own that was independent of the father. And it's because of that effort of creating an independent political personality, that he came out so strongly as an indispensable person. And we noticed from 1995 when he emerged. Actually, what had happened at that time after his father died, Raila and Michael Amolo Kijana, the deputy chair of Ford Kenya, actually fought for the position. We're going to be the leader. And Raila lost in that contest. But then he re-engineered himself immediately and went to a different party, the NDP, in which he contested, and he was elected in the by-election. And from that moment, his trajectory was always forward to the future. Although that future of the presidency never arrived, but he was always struggling for it. And he developed a pattern that is unique in him. He has to be in every government. Whether he loses or not, he finds a way of going back in and be considered to be a valued player who is indispensable. So, and you notice he did that with Moi, and the agenda was different, what they were having it. And then joined the Kibaki government. And then when he didn't get what he thought he should get, he created commotion. And the result was that there was a Nusu Mkata government. And then the 2010 constitution, which he and Kibaki crafted, because they were now allies, it was supposed to be friendly to him. And they should have won the election in 2013. Right. But he lost. Reason being, he was portrayed as a puppet of the West, of the imperialists. Right. So the vote was against imperialists. And Uhuru and Ruto won because of that. And then in 2017, the same thing happened. He still lost. But then he found his way back in government, now being called the handshake, and Uhuru's brother. They started calling each other brothers. And Uhuru had a hard time explaining himself So he kept on saying, I did it because of peace. That if you are going to have peace, you must have Raila inside. No Raila, no peace, kind of thing. Then in 2022, the election that he should have won, if there was an election he should have won, was 2022. But his system betrayed him because they had so many problems internal that it could not deliver. And so he lost by a very narrow margin,
Right.
200,000 votes. And part of the reason he lost 200,000 votes was because his voters celebrated without voting. So you have 600,000 people who did not vote. And they should have voted for him, he would have just scored in. They claim that they didn't have agents in the various places. So how can you say you don't have agents? It doesn't make any sense. So it appeared as if it was Raila's election to win, and he chose to lose. But within 2 years of that, he was in the government. And his explanations when he was asked by people, remember last year when people were demonstrating and saying Ruto must go. And his argument was saying, no, that's not a good argument. Because if Ruto goes, who becomes president? It's Gachagua, and you cannot have that. So you might as well have Ruto in. And so now he's fully in, he died fully in government.
Interesting.
Broad-based government.
Yeah.
And for that, President Ruto was so happy that he decided to give him a state funeral.
Right.
Although he had never been a president. So in being given a state funeral, he's getting the treatment of a president that he never became in reality. But
I
all
think that's
these make him
befitting.
The indispensable man.
Yeah, I think that's befitting to a man of his stature. When you look at what he has done for Kenya, especially in areas of politics and in other areas where he's been very instrumental, I think this state funeral is befitting of his stature. What do you think?
Well, there's no denying the man has worked very hard. He's a very hard worker. That is a given. And he has made his contribution to the political progress in Kenya. Whether it's in demonstrations or in forcing government to do what he wants. So to a large extent, the 2010 constitution was part of his work. The only benefit there, the good thing is that he and the president were on the same page at that time, not on different sides. And so they delivered. Kibaki was on his last term, and Raila was expecting to get his first term. So they synchronized very well. So the push for agitation, the better government is clearly part of his record. Raila, interestingly, he liked history. And he had a habit of reciting historical events, especially when he was escaping an issue. I noticed that some time ago. You ask him a difficult question he doesn't want to deal with, then he gives you a historical lesson about this and this and this and this. By the time he finishes giving history, you've forgotten what it was. And he moves on. That was a political strategy that he seemed to use very well in a number of instances. And of course, he knew how to rouse the crowd, whether he's doing kitendawili or some other things. More recently, before he died, he said becoming a Kenyan Harry Belafonte, singing the calypso. There's some fair to Jamaica. So now people have adopted that as if it is a regular thing. Yeah? Where in Harry Belafonte had said, left a little girl in Kingston town. They've changed Kingston, it's become Bondo town. So kind of, he's got, he had this ability, despite his shortcomings, of being very attractive. The man could get himself out of almost any jam and still look good, even if he might have had something to do with the problem. He then solves it in a very clever way, such that the people who opposed him end up admiring him and start saying they are now friends.
As long as it was politically expedient for him. I said, as long as it was politically expedient for him, he would do whatever he had to do to make sure that he's on the right side.
Yeah, in fact, he was, one can say, practical or pragmatic. And being practical, pragmatic, it means that you put your ideologies on the side. He was a politician. So he took every political opportunity to move ahead. And in doing so, he sometimes disappointed people who thought they were his friends. Because you do there is that story about when he decided to swear himself in as a people's president, not president of Kenya.
Yes.
So people's president, which is not illegal, because had this one been sworn as president of the Republic of Kenya, that might have amounted to treason.
Right.
But a people's president, that was okay. But then his colleagues, those with whom he was in NASA, he told them to stay in a hotel waiting for telephone calls from Nigeria or some other place. Only then, when they were there, they hear that so he could do that very easily without any problem. And if he has to explain, he would explain later. But don't. So it's the same thing that he did with Simeon Nyachai in the year 2002. They were there, and they signed MOUs together. And the next thing Nyachai had was Raila shouting Kibaki Tosha. And Nyachai was furious.
Kibaki Tosha.
So he was a man of political expediency.
Right.
As long as it made him achieve his goal, whatever that goal was. So it was the other people to figure out what the goal was and then be together.
I've been watching the funeral processions, the farewells from across the country. How do you assess this emotional and political significance of these nationwide memorials of Raila Odinga?
When somebody dies, there is a lot of emotions. And the tendency is to remember to say all the good things you can think about and play down the bad ones. It's just common sense or just decency. And yes, the time that he became sick, he did look sick before he went to India. And because he did not look well, there were a lot of speculations that he was missing from action. And because he appeared to be missing from action, people start speculating what is going on. Like some of the ceremony today, we had something said. Some people went to the president and told him, hey, something is not good. And the president provided the jet to fly him to India so that he could be. So the building of empathy has been building up over the weeks that something was really not. There was supposed to be a 20-year celebration of the existence of the ODM as a political party. Now the members are claiming that it is the oldest political party. No, it's not. KANU is still there. So, but there's nothing wrong with claiming something if it's going to promote the agenda of the party. But it can be said that for the last 20 years, it has been a vibrant, consistent party. And he has been the symbol of that party. Without Raila, there is no ODM. And without ODM, of course, that's another matter. Because he was ODM and ODM was Raila. Now that he is not there, you have all these people saying that they are not going to let it die. And also, we notice that as they are making their speeches, they're undercutting each other in the speeches. So these are politicians anyway. So when one says this, we are going to, and then so say now exactly who got what from what. Because all of them are claiming they got it from Raila directly. We talked, this kind of thing. And in the process say that we are going to maintain his legacy and make it bigger. What might happen in the process is that they'll try to make it bigger, meaning making themselves bigger. at the expense of the party, or become the new um, uh, uh, people with their fly whisks. That's a symbol. We've noticed so far that his son, Junior, is trying to claim that legacy
Okay.
by symbolically. Even when he's speaking in these funerals, you can see the politician in him trying to say. In fact, the other day at Nyasa, he said he's his father's son, as if there was
Right.
a question
Right.
that whether he was
It
one.
runs in the
But what he
blood, right?
meant politically,
Right.
he is inheriting his father political
Yeah.
position.
Would that
And you can
surprise
imagine
you?
there are other people who have different opinions about that.
Yeah, but would that surprise you? It runs from, it's within the genes. You look at the grandfather, you look at the father, you look at the uncles. I mean, the entire clan is into politics. So what stops Raila Odinga's son from, taking on the mantle?
Well, I guess it can be claimed that it was a given that he would be the one. So when his brother who died, Fidelis, had he been alive, in theory he would be the one.
Mhm.
But Fidelis died. The problem with Junior is that there seems to be some other people who are also young, and they have been capturing imagination. One of them is Babu Owino.
Mhm.
And some people joke that Raila was grooming Babu Owino because his behavior sometimes looks as if it is a younger version of Raila. And when he went to appeared in the stadium, and the name was mentioned, you can hear people cheering, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
So what this means is that in as much as ODM wants to remain united as a party, there's going to be quite a lot of friction
Right.
within. And not as many people have the ability to hold everybody together the way Raila did. We know that occasionally James Orengo would speak his mind, which may sound as if it's contrary to what the official line. Now there'll be no constraining him as he speaks his mind. We know that Edwin Sifuna, the Secretary General, has a habit of saying things that do not please others. And so we had people talking about how they are going to kick out some people. The implication they might kick out the Secretary General, but he seems to be very popular with the followers, something like that. Then the young man, Babu Owino, whether people like it or not, the young man seems to be having a following, particularly of the youth. And so if there's a contest, it will be Babu Owino and Junior to see who the youth follow.
Mhm.
And so it's going to be a very interesting period to watch the next month or two as to the direction that the ODM party takes. We also know that the president is very happy to hear the way people are talking.
Of course.
That Raila left us in the broad basket, the broadbed basket. We stay there, not move out. But those are ministers and a few other people. So there is friction that's going on. But either way, the name of Raila has entrenched itself in people's mind.
Mm.
The first, like in the last 3-4 days, nothing else is happening. Nobody, they're not talking about anything else. It's just Raila, Raila this, Raila that, Raila the statesman, Raila the whatever. It's just Raila. So it is entrenched in people's mind that it cannot be forgotten for a long time because of the force that he was.
Right. I wanted to go back to the point you made earlier, looking at who takes over the mantle. You talked about Babu Owino. You talked about Raila's son. The lot of young people have been agitated, especially recently after he sided with President William Ruto. When at the peak of the Gen Z protests, he came out and supported Ruto. A lot of Gen Z seemed to take a different stance when it came to him as the kingmaker. What do you make of that? Is it the time maybe to bring about change, especially bringing young people to be the leaders of these big political movements in Kenya?
Well, there was a feeling of betrayal when the Gen Zs rose up last year and they wanted change. And yes, among the youth, they keep on saying the older generation has failed. So within the ODM, the older generations, the Orangos and the Anyangnyongos and others, would have a little problem because there is, sometimes it's been said, who these Gen Zs are, who are raising so much hell. They are very well educated people who are techno-savvy, as opposed to their parents who are still analog, like me. These people can manipulate the social media very well and everything.
But you're not analog. You and I were able to talk, to have this conversation.
Well, to the Gen Zs, I'm still analog. Yeah, of course, I know a little bit more than a lot of other people. But compared to these people, they are way ahead. Eh? Now, how did that happen? When Kibaki became president in 2002, he's responsible for some of these things because he ordered all children to go to school and they are not going to pay. So they are not excused for not going to school. And in fact, chiefs used to go around looking for any child who is not in school, you have to answer, why are you not in school? So these children learned and they were taught, and they were even taught how to think. Some of the books they read were the ones that challenged the thinking. Eh? Then when they went to high school, they became digital. Because Uhuru was busy and emphasizing digital. So they became part of that. Now, when they are college-age students, and then go to the universities and find their problems, not just in the universities, but the health service, the whole country, they say, wait a minute, something is wrong. They don't remember Moi. They never know anything about Moi. They were not there. And even Kibaki, they have some vague idea who he was. But all they know is the last 5-6 years, they say things have not been going well. And they have been taught to question things. And since they know how to play around with the social media, they communicate very easily with each other. And that's why they were able to rise up and say, can we do something about it? If the parents have become weak, indolent, we cannot sit and do nothing. So they did something. So yes, there is this generational issue. Is the country going in the right direction? And as they are looking, if the country is not going in the direction, then what? And if you are talking about a generational thing, then which youth? Because you can say youth, and you are getting the wrong youth. You will not be able to guide properly, yeah? Especially when the leadership would appear to be passed on from in families. Eh? Then you have some problems in this kind of thing. So there is going to be a lot of discussion. Yes, the torch should be passed to the youthful generation, but who among the youth is to be the one? And I think whoever comes out looking as if he is making sense and addressing the concerns, not repeating their parents' language and explanations, maybe that's what the direction is likely to go. And it will happen not just in the ODM party, but also across the border, because there is a general feeling that something is not right, and therefore something needs to be done. Whoever emerges as the one with the sample solutions, then that will be it.
Professor Omunene, Raila Odinga was both revered and very controversial. How would you summarize his legacy in shaping Kenya's democratic evolution?
No, yeah, Raila, a balanced examination of his legacy was that he was loved. No, he was adored. He was a cult unto himself. Because there are those who are, he could never do anything wrong. And those people will beat you up if you raise the question that Raila is wrong somewhere. That's one side. There's the other side that did see him as a source of problems. He loses and does not accept, and something like that. And then he also had some rough teams, enforcers of his dicta. He did not simply ask you to do something. If you did not hear properly, there will be people to remind you how to hear. And by the time you've been reminded, you go back to the drawing board. And so, whether it's right or wrong, he has a reputation of being a violent man. In as much as people are talking about him being a man of peace. And the first time that this comes into the picture was the attempted coup in 1982, where he was implicated. And not that he was the mastermind, I don't know about it, but he was implicated in the whole thing. And when he was questioned about it, the record says he did not deny it. He said yes, but he did it in order to stop somebody else from having still a very interesting argument. And that somebody else was Charles Njonjo. And he did spend some years in the 1980s when Moi was busy locking almost everybody up who raised a question. And so he has not that reputation of being a sufferer, someone who suffered for a particular cause. And the next time you have some feeling that may be responsible for violence was in 2007, when he created an outfit called the Pentagon, military kind of thing. And the disputed election in 2007 was violent. Things went wrong, not because of the election results, but they had been going wrong all the way before the election. That's why some parts they had to create makeshift voting booths but the magnitude of that commotion was so big that it became virtually necessary to have international intervention. Now there are people who associate him with that. And one of the people who did that, the old Robert Mugabe, for some reason he didn't like Raila very much. He accused him of having blood on his hands.
Yeah? Even Raila did not like Mugabe that much.
He also didn't like Mugabe.
Yeah. I remember him speaking here in Washington at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. And the first example he gave was that of Mugabe, how Mugabe had destroyed Zimbabwe as the economy, how Zimbabwe used to be the breadbasket of Africa, and Raila took him on. So I think both guys did not like.
No, they didn't like each other,
right?
Because both had some sort of reputation as revolutionaries, but in the wrong directions. Mugabe, there was a problem with Chingarai,
Changarai.
And Raila was a Chingarai man.
Yes.
So
both of them were
I
in
think
opposition.
they just exchanged that nice insults about each other. But the Mugabe's response to Raila was that he had blood in his hands, so he had nothing to say so. And not just that, the various places, it might have been responsible. The negative reputation,
right,
might have been responsible for his loss in the chairmanship of the AU Commission.
Just
because remember, these are presidents who are voting,
right? And
each of them is worried about his job. So if he has a choice, you vote for somebody who might have a record of organizing things that may not be nice to you, or you vote for somebody who is safe. No such a record. I think it had an effect in the long run. When you count all those heads of states, enough to say, wait a minute. And yes, he had a good campaign of being a Pan-Africanist, as the projection was, and having support of some leaders here and there. But it was quite not enough. And part of the reason it was not enough was because of that negative reputation of being a rough person. Domestically, there was a time when his wish was enforced by what was called the Men in Black. And so it was a rally, a meeting for party members, an election, who aborted. And the voting was done by Men in Black. So that was it. These are some of things that people know. And so when they say there is this image of being rough, it's based on those kind of things. And so he had to balance these two. Exactly. Who was he? He was an astute political manipulator, a pragmatist, and he would change tune very quickly if it would advance his political objective. One of them told me his experience. They were coming from somewhere, and they appointed him to be their spokesman, and then he was going to address President Moi. And when they went to address President Moi, he changed the tune. So they said, wait a minute, what happened? So the occasion did not allow what they thought they could do. So he fit the new environment, and he had that a bit. So he was a politician through and through.
Right. So as a historian, Professor Munene, as a historian, you've had maybe the front seat of observing Kenyan politics over the years. You've been at the heart, you've seen these politicians do their thing. How much of a role do you think Raila played in transforming the country from a one-party rule to open democracy?
Well, he was a participant as a member of what was called the Young Turks. The ones that were associated with what came to be called the FOD, the Forum for Democracy, for advancement of democracy. Now, there were two layers there. The elders, which included his father, Martin Shikuku, Masinde Muliro, George Ndenge, Bamaris, about 6 elders, and Philip Gashoka representing Kenya Matiba. The time he spent in jail was something significant. But we also know that what happened, Moi messed himself up. The 1988 Lorong elections. And people picked up, they became very big. People start saying this is wrong. By the time in 1990, Matiba and Irubia asked for permission to hold a rally, and, in Kamkunji. It was picking up. Of course, the rally, the Sabasaba rally, was a turning point in the country because it showed that the initiative had moved away from the president, and now it was with the people. So when the Ford was created thereafter, it was riding on Sabasaba's activities. And in the Ford, you have those two layers of the elders and the younger people. Now, Raila, along with other people like Itobi Manyara and Paul Moite and Orengo and others, were not the ones that were called the Young Turks. Right. They were not visible, but they were there. doing all the sort of things. And the pressure that they put Ford and others did for, let's say, a year and a half or so is the one that delivered. Because apart from the pressure from the international community, which cut off funds, and Moi then said, no, this is, we have to accommodate. Yeah? So they accommodated by reintroducing multi-party politics, removing the two-term limit, not the two-term, removing the Section 2A. And it was just a Moi demand that should be removed, and it was removed. Not because Moi wanted it, but because he had no choice but to do it. And what is that had forced him to do that? It was this pressure coming from the multi-party advocates. So you had people like Martha Karua there. She was young, really younger in those days. And Gibson, and David Alamba, and quite a number of people who, through various aspects of pressuring, are responsible for the return of multi-partyism in Kenya. And so in 1992, then we had the first multi-party election in post-colonial Kenya, because the ones we had before were during colonial times or towards the end of colonialism. But once Kenya became independent, the post-colonial period, the one serious multi-party, there was no serious multi-party election. You can say there was a little bit of it in the little general election of 1966, and which was rather one way in one place and another place, but that was nothing. In the 1969 election was simply Kanu, and from there was no other. So 1992 was the return to multi-party politics that had been there on the eve of independence. Now, if I may add, 1992 was a very interesting year because many people assumed that Moi had lost the election because he was unpopular. They assumed he had lost the election because in Zambia, Kenneth Kaunda lost to a trade unionist who was not even sure he was going to win. So given that, people used to add, if Kaunda lost, Moi has lost. So all these people who had been agitating for one thing or another, each of them imagined himself to be the president. Why? Because Moi has lost, even though they are not voted. So in their mind, that's why they had so much people fighting to become the next president and having their own party. Although some of them knew they were not going to be like John Haron Moore knew he was not going to be a president. But the other, if you look at Matiba, a bit of backing a little bit. Each believe they're going to replace Moi. Because Moi has lost. They could not agree on the formula for who is going to be the candidate. Right. To his credit, Moi was a very cunning politician. And people underestimated him. So he's the one who introduced the two-term limit when he thought he might lose. He's the one who introduced the 5 provinces requirements, 25%. But nobody in should be like him. And then he appointed a chairman of the commission, somebody with some dubious credentials, and a former judge who had and sure, when the votes were in, he was announced the winner, and there was a swearing in within an hour of the announcement. And people wondered what had happened, so which now changed the dynamic. Raila was elected at that time as a member for RADA under the Ford Kenya ticket, his father's party. So he now emerges as his own, begins to emerge as his own man. And when his father died, that's when he became liberated from his father. And as a liberated man, he has been making waves everywhere. He's made himself indispensable to every government, that you have no choice but to deal with him. So you ask about his place in history. Of course, it's more pronounced while after his father's death than when his father was alive. Because when his father was alive, he was just a supporting cast somewhere there. But after that, he was his own main player, and he made every president feel it, that he was the one and had to deal with him. So he's the indispensable man of the last 30 years in Kenyan politics.
Interesting. You just reminded me when you are giving the example of the judge who was appointed by Kibaki. You reminded me of Joseph Stalin, who once said that it doesn't matter how many people show up to vote, but what matters is the person who counts the vote and announces the elections. Right?
Yeah, there is that peculiar Stalinistic argument.
Yeah.
That, how people vote is not the issue.
Right.
It is how it is counted. But then how it's counted is not the issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's what is announced. And what is announced now becomes whatever it is.
Yeah.
We saw that in the Mlolongo. And it was naked. You see, this line is shorter than this one. And then the returning officer would say the shorter line is longer than long. And people, that's when Moi lost it, actually. People could see it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do that. You know, secret ballots, you never know how somebody voted.
Right.
But with the Mlolongo, you can see.
Mm.
Now, that was where the first sign of the collapse. The secret ballot, well, he has run for office for about 4 or 5 times. In 1997, he lost. In 1992, he lost. In 2013, he lost. In 2017, he lost. In 2022, he lost. Now, the debate is whether he actually lost all those, or were they something funny happened. I've heard some prominent people say he has always won, but there has always been stolen, including some of his supporters. In fact, some of his prominent supporters. But it is not true that he has always won. And when he has lost, it's probably because of errors. Like the 2022, clearly. There's no need of blaming some Venezuelan character.
I remember that, yes.
By their own admission, they did not have agents. When 600,000 voters did not vote, when the advice in some areas was ignored, the internal quarrels or disputes within the Raila camp are legendary, something else that accounted for the loss. The interesting thing, apart from 1997, where he came third, he has lost by very narrow margins, roughly 200,000 votes. That's the interesting part, because that's what he lost in 2007, roughly 200,000. In 2013, roughly in 2017, roughly, and in 2022, very clearly. So what is it that makes it hard for him to go over the 200 or to turn the 200 to his side? What is it?
Maybe
that will need to be investigated by experts.
Right.
On the
So to that point, there are a lot of I've seen people who praise Raila. There are some people who have criticized his alliances. Earlier, you talked about how he has been part of every government in the last 30 years, right?
Yes.
Let's talk about the most recent one with President William Ruto. I remember when President William Ruto was talking, campaigning, he would be like, I'm not going to shake hands with this guy. He would not even
Mm.
call him names, but he didn't want to enter some kind of arrangement like former President Uhuru Kenyatta had done, the handshake, right? So Ruto was totally against that. But what happened? How did Ruto change his mind now to be one of the champions of Raila? I've been listening to him giving eulogies, giving speeches about Raila. What changed? Is
Well,
it politics? Is it politics? Is he trying to play
it's
politics?
politics. It is not Raila who changed. It is his opponents who changed. Because if you forget about the Kibaki, because that was a different story. For Uhuru, who had described Raila as a madman, and said all those bad things about him. Of course, they said bad things about each other. But Raila made it almost impossible for Uhuru to govern. And so it is Uhuru who is looking for Raila. And in so doing, Uhuru virtually surrendered part of the government to Raila. Do whatever he wants with it.
He was a
And that part
co-president.
of Raila lost because people were not very happy with that development. So those who had been supporting Uhuru said, now what is going on? You are being neglected, so as to accommodate Raila. And he has a very good ability to do that, which he did. The question was Ruto. Yes, there were those statements that there will be no handshakes, no nini, no some statements that made in hindsight they don't make sense at all, because the very thing they were saying will not happen happened. And Pua Gachagua became the sacrificial lamb. He was the one who was making a lot of noise about this will not happen, this will do that. And then it became Raila's demonstrations could be very rough. And so you have there now Ruto wondering now how does he cool the temperatures and appear to be legitimate. Because what there were those who are doing was questioning his legitimacy as president. And so how do you restore that, the legitimacy which he won, and especially when the Gen Zs rose up and demonstrated and showed a different way of demonstrating, not the old Raila way, but a very different one, where they were running around carrying the flag, reciting the Constitution and the national anthem. So the argument was that it was the government that was violating the Constitution and the Kenyan laws and the spirit. Therefore, it is illegitimate. So how does he restore that legitimacy? And so he had to turn to Raila. And Raila was very happy to accommodate because he is back. And once he got in, his choice of who is to be minister was accommodated. So we have the four ministers, the attorney general, and some PSS here and there, and always access to positions of power. National events, he is there, almost as a co-president. So necessity forces the president to look for him, and so create a new alliance that's for both of them. Actually, it's usually a two-man alliance, the president and Raila. And so he appears every time he loses, he still comes into the government and gets what he wants.
So he was
And
a kingpin of
one theory
sorts.
that has been
He was
spread
the king,
around
right? I was
is
saying
that
that
maybe he's never serious about winning because he gets more by losing.
right.
Yeah.
You know, I've had also some arguments that not only was he like the kingmaker or the kingpin of Nyanza, but for the entire country. Because, like you correctly said, all these politicians would come to him if they are stuck, they don't know how to run the country, they would default to Raila.
Yeah, they call on Raila because he seems to create stability. I think there was that statement about some US presidents saying he would rather have somebody inside fighting out there rather than out there fighting in. Because if he's fighting you, you're in trouble. Eh? So
Right.
best to just bring him and give him whatever he wants to go and deal with those other people there. And it appears that Raila has been very good at dealing with those other people who are outside the government once he is accommodated in the government. The other thing that seems to be common, whenever he gets into coalition with the president, it would appear that the target would be somebody who appears to be prominent and appear to be the next person who can gain the power. Eh? So how do you make sure that this person who looks as if he's the one is undercut such that he cannot be the one? And some of the coalitions have been that way. Even the 1990s one, 98 one, it was an interesting one. And then you have the one against Ruto in 2018. It was a coalition of Uhuru and Raila against Ruto. Because then, and now when Ruto and Raila get together, it was a coalition of the two deputy president, Gachagua, whom they found a way of kicking out. And of course, then getting in a lot of his wishes being given. And for him, if he was going to be alive, he probably would have been a candidate in 2027. But by then, he had made some people feel very good. So that he goes out as a champion, somebody who always got what he wanted. However he did it is not the issue.
Okay.
But he got it, except for being president.
Except for being president, I think that's a very important point there. How about beyond Kenya? Raila was not just a Kenyan politician. Across Africa, he was revered. When you look at even his the last stunt that he tried to pull off, he almost became the Africa Union chairperson. How can he be reviewed, or how can Africans remember him? Is it as a reformer, as a populist, or a continental statesman?
It's hard to say. I think he had an image problem. Raila had an image problem. He is very forceful, and but he's not the most eloquent public speaker in some things. And yes, he should have had a lot of things going for him, and he did have a lot of things going for him. But the fact that there may be a lot of other people and people being suspicious of him for different reasons. And that level of suspicion is not simply localized. It is general, regional, and continental. Is one of these unique individuals who stands out despite himself. And whatever he does becomes news, even if it's small. And whatever he does will rub somebody the wrong way somewhere, because somebody's interests are likely to be affected, and hence the reaction. As for the supporters who are fanatic, some of them believe that he may be a small version of God. Some of them, their responses are almost blasphemous. So, supposedly in defense of the man. So he had this ability to arouse emotions, deep emotions, whether positive or negative. It was part of his DNA that he could do that. The other day, the former president Uhuru, who said they had become very good friends because they used to sit together drinking a new kind of porridge, uji. And so uji has been introduced into the political lexicon as something you drink with a friend after work. And so today, one of the grandsons of Jaramogi was there saying he would like to drink the uji that Uhuru was drinking, so that he can get the courage to speak whatever he wanted to say. There is a man of interest to a lot of people. I met him maybe once or twice. We never had a long discussion. I would not say that we had a long discussion. But I met him once in somebody's house. Of course, there was a function there, so we met there. And so we exchanged, can't even remember what we said. But that's a long time ago.
Right.
In another one during a daytime function when he was a candidate for the president. And I listened to him, and he displayed his command of history in that event. Instead of answering an issue, he had this way of diverting attention from something and getting into the historical excursions or engaging in music became a clever way of skirting the issue and go to something else. So he is a man who aroused a lot of different emotions and attachments. But overall, he was a likable man, a very likable man.
Yeah, very briefly, we're almost out of time, but I wanted you to maybe to comment on, as he's being laid at rest, what does his passing mean for Kenya's political future? And who, if anyone, can take his place that he leaves behind?
Can anyone take his place? No. Not for a long time. With the president, yes, but his passing in India was anticipated. People were looking for it. The fact that the president decided to give him a state funeral with all the military honors that are pertaining there has created a national atmosphere of how important this man is, because no one else has been given this treatment apart from presidents. But even presidents, the emotions are not this big.
Right.
So then now, and the question has been coming up: who will take his place? And at present, within the ODM party, I think we discussed earlier, there are a few people who are jostling for positions. It will take time before they have become very clear. Presently, his big brother, Boboro, has been appointed the acting chairman, and most likely will be confirmed, or the acting leader. But even if they do that, it will take time before somebody else can make himself the indispensable person in Kenyan politics. Well, that's what Raila was, indispensable in the last 30 years. Can somebody else make himself indispensable in Kenyan politics? None of them I see at present. I see some young people coming up and making some very interesting comments here and there, and they might capture imagination. Already, we've mentioned Babu Owino. He is an interesting fellow. Edwin Sifuna is also interesting within the ODM circles. There are a few other people, but those two are the ones to watch as far as I'm concerned. And of course, June was also very quiet. He's beginning to flex his muscles and fly whisk. In other places, apart from ODM, we still have their leaders. Kalonzo Musyoka is still there. But you need to look below Kalonzo, what will happen. There are no, in the Jubilee, Uhuru's party, they still have to come up with somebody, that people will resonate with the public. They don't have,
Professor,
but we never know. They can come up.
Professor, unfortunately, we've run out of time. We have to end it there. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Okay, all the best to you.
Yeah, Professor Macharia Munene, thank you so much. We want to know what you think about the significance and the challenges of facing Kenya after the passing of Raila Odinga. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to Paul Ndio on Substack, X, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Spotify. Stay tuned for this continuing coverage on Ndiho Media and other social media platforms. Goodbye for now from Washington, and a very big thank you to Professor Macharia. Thank you so much.